Before we dive into today's episode, I have something truly special to share. Next September, I'll be leading an intimate women's retreat through the south of France and northern Italy, and you're invited. Picture this: mornings exploring the colorful markets of the French Riviera, afternoons sipping wine, and a hotel view with golden Mediterranean sunsets. Whether you love photography, food, or just want to reconnect with your playful creative self, this trip is designed for you. Spots are limited, so if all this sounds like your kind of adventure, please visit tourwithabsolutely.com and look for the tour France and Italy with Crystal. You can also send me a message or check out the show notes. Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. So welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thanks, Crystal. Happy to be here.
So you describe yourself as someone who can't stop making things. Where did all this creative impulse begin for you?
I blame my mom. My mom was such a creative person, and she was always pointing things out. Look at that. Look at those leaves. Look at the flower. Look at that building. Really had a sense of wonder and appreciation for beauty. And that, at first, when I was young, of course, annoyed me. But then later in life, I realized I had that same gene too. And my mom made the most beautiful home. She was super creative. And when I was young, she went to work as an interior designer. And that took her into a career where she ended up being a custom home builder in the 90s in Ohio, where that wasn't something women really did. So her home life, the way she had us in this setting of beauty and love, and then her work life, I think really inspired me and just modeled how to live a creative life in so many ways.
Yeah, definitely. Our parents influence us a lot for sure. And it's nice to have someone who was supportive.
Oh, for sure. And she always said, you can do anything. You can do anything you want. What do you want to do? And I think that still infuses how I live and what I make. So I've been writing since I was 20, and I've been making art for 20 years, just practicing drawing. And then I became a coach about 26 years ago. And that really changed everything in terms of me being able to make things and get them out the door. I started focusing right away on writers and artists because I discovered that the creative process, or the creative act of making something and then getting it out into the world is the greatest way to get to know yourself and also to get over any of your inner obstacles or limiting beliefs. So for me, it's a personal growth path. So making things both combines the things I love, beauty and art and writing, with personal growth path and developing myself as a person. It really is my sweet spot.
And talk about some of the common problems that people face in your coaching programs. It sounds like a lot of imposter syndrome, and talk about some of the problems and how you help them face them.
Sure. Well, numbers 1 and 2 of the most common problems, we all have them. And it's funny, I was working with someone once and she said, wow, our inner critics are really unoriginal.
We're all the same.
They're the same. So you might recognize these, the listeners might recognize. Number 1, is it good enough? Am I good enough? Is my writing or my art good enough? And we often don't have an actual metric for that. What does that mean? What is good enough? How do I define that? And that is one of the biggest problems that people have, is not knowing what success is for them or what good enough is for them. So first, I help people identify what that means for them. How will you know when it's good enough? What specifically does that look like? And then that really gives us a way to delve into craft and specificity of what we're making to work on that and make that better. And then so that we can know when we achieve that good enough and we're not just in some giant cesspool of never good enough, which is just too painful. The second thing that I notice most of us have is, who will care about this? Does anybody care about this? Why would anybody care about this? And that is one of the things that's really hard, because I think when we are making something, we're really crafting something from nothing. And we don't know if anybody will care or want what we have to offer. So this is one of the things I help my book writing clients very specifically right away. Who are you writing for? And not an audience or a big general audience or idea of people, but helping them identify a very specific person or kind of person who we're writing for. And that's not just a marketing thing like know your avatar. It really also helps with making decisions about what goes into a book and what doesn't go into a book. So if you're often a client or myself will have this thought, I don't know, will anyone care about this? I can say, okay, my reader is Margaret. Will Margaret care about this? Margaret actually really needs this. She has told me, or I have a sense, I know who I'm writing for. She really needs to hear this. And that just cuts through a lot of the indecision and insecurity about whether it matters or will anybody care. We know who we're writing for. We know they'll care. And ironically, it's a funny thing, Crystal, is this is the thing that most people resist so hard. It's like I've asked them to do something unimaginable, choosing a very specific person they're writing for or making for. But once they do that, it makes everything so much better and so much easier.
Yeah, because they know who they're working with, who they're working for.
Yep.
And so your company, Original Impulse, it helps people trust their instincts. So what does that process look like in action?
It looks like having a regular, continual relationship with yourself as you go through what you're making. So a lot of productivity stuff will just focus on, checking things off the to-do list, getting across the finish line with tasks or projects. That's part of it for sure. But I'm interested in, what do you notice? What are you learning? How do you feel when you do it this way or that way? There's so many productivity hacks and advice out there, and we'll often try to follow it and then fail because it just doesn't fit our lifestyle or the way we work. And then people will often feel like they're a failure. So that drives me crazy, because we really need to know what works for us. So often when I'm starting with a client or working with somebody, I'll just say, let's start with the first month as a laboratory of learning. You really getting to know what works for you. So often someone will say, I'm going to write every day for an hour at this time. It's like, great, let's try it. Try it for a week. And then at the end of the week, we just notice what worked, what didn't. And often it won't work the way we think it will. This is just one of the problems I think all of us have, is this kind of idea when we're planning that we won't have interruptions, that we won't get tired, that we won't be human and have all these other physical and emotional needs. So after a week, you have a lot of information, or even 2 weeks, maybe more. And it's not like, oh, I failed at that, or I didn't show up this time. I would ask, what got in the way? What did you do instead? What do you know about that time of day? And that will yield so much information. Like, oh, I thought morning was the time because everybody says you should write in the morning, but actually I really like to write at 6 p.m. And I love helping people find their way and really root into that, own it, and make it a practice that's easier for them to get to the work. Because as you know, as an artist, a photographer, the work itself is hard enough. So I'm here to remove a lot of the friction that we encounter around just getting to the work.
Definitely. I think that we all struggle with that as entrepreneurs, as creatives. It can always be things that can make our life easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And more enjoyable. I really don't enjoy all of the inner angst that I feel around stuff. So it's a lot of conversation with myself. It's a lot of just getting to know my practices and what works for me so that I can really just enjoy the act of making.
And what's one myth about creativity that you love busting with your clients?
Well, that there's one way to do it. That there are best practices that everybody should follow. Are you wondering like what's a specific practice?
No, just any, like, just there's something
Oh,
like people are
okay.
always, they have myths about creativity or how to be creative. And
Yeah.
what's that myth you like to break for them?
Okay. Here's the biggest one. Uh, that you need a big chunk of time to get anything done. People will think, oh, I need to write for 2 or 4 hours. And I don't really know very many people who write for 4 hours. If you're doing a retreat where you've created an environment that's your sole focus, sure, you probably would be able to get that amount of time in. But in general, we really have a lot going on. It's hard to dedicate a huge chunk of time, and while we might crave that and think we need that, actually shorter chunks of time are what get us in and help us to maintain a practice. So even if it's 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour, I find that that's valid and that adds up.
And how do you help people reconnect with their creative voice when they feel lost or blocked?
I love the 15-minute date with yourself or with your project. So if you're working on a project and you've fallen away, having a 15-minute date where you're just getting in touch with the project. You're not trying to produce anything or get anything done. It might be opening up a manuscript. It might be getting your sketchbook out, revisiting something that you had been working on. And it's kind of like if you haven't been in touch with a friend for a while, you might say, let's just reconnect really quickly and say hi and connect without any pressure. So I sometimes call myself the lower the bar coach because people often have too high of a bar. I've got to get in there and do 2 hours of work. I have to write 5,000 words or whatever. It's like, let's lower the bar just so you can get back in. At the end of the 15 minutes, you're going to have some clarity about what to do next and where to go. And then you'll feel that connection again, and you'll feel that vitality that you feel when you are doing your creative work. So the 15-minute date is one of my favorite tips for people.
I think that's really great advice. I think we put too much pressure on ourselves, like you said. So it's nice to just lighten it up a little bit and remember why we even started doing what we do.
That's a great point. Why, going back to your original impulse, why am I doing this? What's important about this for me? And I also love what you said, lighten up. Let's lighten it up a little because this is a double-edged sword. The things that we're making are meaningful to us, which we need to motivate us and drive us. But then that can also get heavy and turn into too meaningful and too important. And then we just get stuck. So I love your reminder for us to lighten up a little too.
Yeah, let's lighten up, guys.
Yeah.
So you've published 9 books and you've exhibited your art. How do you balance multiple creative passions without burning out?
That's a good question. I don't feel like I get burnt out on that so much, but balancing sometimes means things need to be set aside. So I just finished and published my second novel. It took 2 years to write, and that takes a lot of focus and attention alongside my day job of helping other people create. So I found that I had to set aside my visual artist for the most part. I wasn't able to keep a consistent sketchbook practice or work on bodies of work. Writing the novel was all consuming, and that was the art form that I chose. And I would have to reassure my artist that she would get her time back. And what I noticed was I started doing more doodles and drawings in my morning journal practice versus having a separate sort of practice of having a sketchbook or making works of art. So my artist got in there in a little way that felt good, but that wasn't about having, she didn't get the whole main stage. The writer was the artist who got the main stage for those years.
Definitely. Yeah, it's good. Good plan. And what does your creative routine look like now? How has it changed over time?
Well, that's a good question. I just put the novel out. So my creative routine is marketing and promotion, which I find I have to be really creative because it is not really something I would say I want to do. Like I want to write or I want to paint or draw, but I need to. So what my creative practice looks like is finding ways to be creative in the marketing and promotion and in how I organize my days so that when I make a post or when I write an article, it feels fun. And I notice that energy in me. I notice the little vitality flag rise up a little like, ooh, this is fun. I like this idea. This is great. People will enjoy this. This is a great way to do it. So I think being flexible according to what the project is at hand is really important. And that's the tricky thing too, is we spend all this time learning what works for us, but that's going to change according to the project. The first phase of the project of writing the book was very different than the publishing phase and now the promoting phase. So being adaptable, but showing up consistently and building structures around that help me.
Yeah, I think it's all about showing up at the end, whether we're changing to what we're doing or, it's a different part of what we're doing. It's just like, just do it.
Yeah.
And how do you help creatives manage self-doubt, perfectionism, fear of visibility? These are all things we face on a daily basis.
Self-doubt, I think, what I've discovered, Crystal, is I think it's always going to be there. So one of the things I think that I would like, and I'm sure many people would like, would be to eradicate those doubts and thoughts that keep us from just showing up and relaxing and being fully present with what we're making. So developing a relationship with the self-doubt. And what I've done, I remember when I was writing my first novel and I would be just jamming away and writing. And then this little voice would come in and say, that's not very well written. That's not literary. And I developed just a very short phrase. And this is what I invite my clients to do. My short phrase was, that's okay. Just keep going. I'm not trying to get into a discussion with it. I'm not trying to argue with it. I'm not trying to prove it wrong. It's just like, it's okay. Just keep going. And I think that some of that lighten up, like, whatever, just keep going. So a 1 or 2 word phrase to just kind of interrupt that pattern or set that doubt aside. I don't need to think about that right now. Right now, I'm just writing and riffing. Later, I can edit.
Yeah.
What were the other two?
Perfectionism and fear of visibility.
Yeah, perfectionism. It's just, I really hate it because it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as perfect. So even going back to what are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to write in a certain way. I'm trying to make a certain piece of work that looks a certain way and has a certain feeling. Really knowing what you're trying to do and then working toward that versus having some invisible standard that nobody can even meet because you don't know what it is. I think perfectionism is really, that should be eradicated. There's no perfect. And then recognizing that when you make mistakes or don't reach the high bar that you set for yourself, you're going to survive. I made so many mistakes when I was publishing this book. I couldn't believe how many mistakes I made around this. And it's painful, but I had to realize like, that's what being human is. I am human. I get to be human and I'm going to make mistakes. That's okay. The visibility part, that's a good one. And really knowing what's important for you about the thing you're making. Is it really important to get your work out there widely, or are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for yourself and a small group of people? right away when I'm working with someone, I ask them what's their vision? What do they want? What are they hoping for? And often it is not just being rich and famous and getting it all out there and everybody knows it. It might be a smaller goal. So helping people identify that so they can kind of have a sense of their sphere of visibility or bubble of how much they want to be in the world. And then, there's a lot of ways to practice that visibility with social media and posting online. It starts to get us used to being seen for the creative dynamos that we are.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have fear of that too. It's like, we want to do our work, but also what if we get judged and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, with social media and everything, it's so easy to share now too. So it's a double-edged sword.
It is. And I bet you see that a lot as a photographer. Like, look at me. Oh, don't look at me. Like that sense of being seen. We do want it and sometimes fear it.
Exactly. You just don't know the response. And can you share a moment when you trusted your creative gut and it paid off in a surprising way?
Hmm. Yeah, I've been leading creativity workshops mostly in France since 2005, mostly by myself. I started with a friend and then branched off doing them on my own. And a couple of years ago, I was interviewing one of my friends, Marcus McAllister. He's an artist in Paris. And he said something about teaching. And I thought I should invite several of my artist teacher friends to co-lead a workshop with me in Paris. And immediately, so this fun idea pops up. And then what happens next? The inner critic or the practical part of us comes in and says, well, how's that going to work out? How will that work out financially? That's not going to work. So I set the idea aside. It came back and I was going for a walk one day and I was like, how is this going to work? And it all downloaded. It was amazing how a walk can really jiggle free some new insights and ideas, because the whole structure of it and the way the pay and how we would charge and everything all downloaded. I rushed home. I wrote it all down. And we've been leading those. We're doing the third one this October in Paris, and it worked out great. We got paid well. People loved it. People really enjoyed having multiple teachers. So that was super fun and really very clear example of how often that first thought of that won't work is really not to be paid attention to.
Yeah, just ignore it, guys.
Just ignore it.
Ignore it. And what keeps you coming back to the creative process even when it's hard?
I can't not create. And, I extend the creative process to my day-to-day life too. It's summer when we're recording this. So my garden is incredibly creative. I'm making decisions. I'm learning. I'm hyper aware and observant. I get to really soak in the beauty and the miracle of seeing things grow. Also, cooking is super creative for me. So I feel like that creativity is woven into my everyday. And then in terms of making things, I just can't not. I have to. Even just last Friday, I was away from home. I was relaxing and I got an idea about how to structure the promotion, like the next 6 months of promoting my novel. And it was like a miracle just having this new idea, like, oh, here's how it will go. And here's how it will be easy and fun. And so I think one of the biggest things we need as creative people is that space. And often our lives are just packed. It's too much. We have so many obligations and we're just going from one thing to the next. We don't give ourselves the space for ideas to come in and land like they did on that walk. And when I was by the pool, that kind of space and just stopping doing, which is hard for me and others, I know. Let's relax a little and let things come in and let inspiration have a landing pad.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. I think that comes up a lot on the podcast about just making space to do nothing, be bored. It's so important.
Yeah. And then also, being a Paris person, that you are and that I am, big cities like Paris and Lisbon really inspire me because there's just such a great opportunity to walk around, wander, see things, make new connections. The world brings all kinds of unexpected ideas and connections that I would not have made if I were just home alone.
And talk about your new book, Her Lisbon Colors. It's a novel about midlife reinvention. How much of the story is reflected in your own life?
So in 2008, I left Boulder and moved to Europe. I was planning on going to Italy, and then I ended up in Lisbon, where I met so many more people than I had in any other travels, locals, Portuguese people. And I met a young, hot Portuguese guy who I fell in love with, and we started a life together and had this great adventure and romance that was kind of equally wonderful and equally difficult. And then when it ended, I was like, this is a great romance novel. This is a great story. Someday I'll write that. And it went on my someday on my list. Like you might have a list of projects that you'll get to someday. So long story short, I decided to dedicate myself to it and write it and see what would happen with it. It turns out it's not a romance novel because that has to end happily ever after. And mostly it ends with my character being happily ever after with herself and her artist and her creativity. So writing this book was really, well, the first year was very hard because it was a lot of learning. I felt like I was relearning how to write a novel. And then the second year, when I was able to take a little bit more creative license and really kind of get out of me being the character and into creating a new character, Darla, and make some creative choices, that was super fun. So it ended up being based on or inspired by my experience, but it's not a memoir. It's not all true. And a lot of people are reading it and like wondering what's true, what's not. I'm like, just flow with the story, just enjoy it. So
you'll never know.
I have to say, when I mentioned earlier about how I think of our creative projects as a path for growing and learning and understanding ourselves more, I think this was the thing that gave me the most personal growth and insight into myself as a human out of all the things I've done, therapy and, journaling, everything. Writing this novel, making my stories somebody else's stories. There's a practice called narrative therapy where you write a different ending for an experience you had. And that's basically what I did with this. I wrote myself a different ending. And the whole process was incredibly therapeutic. And I learned so much about writing and story. I'm really grateful that I came back around to it and that I got it out in the world. I'm kind of looking at it now like, wow, it happened. And there it is.
Congratulations. I mean, it's wonderful. And like you said, it's like rewriting your history. There's some closure, there's healing. I mean, writing is wonderful.
It's great. And I really hope that readers have a good time with this. It's kind of a great summer escape read, just to nothing dark or happens. It's definitely, there's conflict, but it's just a fun adventure in Lisbon. I really hope that people feel inspired for their own creativity by reading this.
And what advice would you give someone who feels like they're too late to be creative or reinvent themselves?
Well, there's so many role models of people who are doing things later in life. And I get so inspired by that. And I just don't think it's ever too late. I mean, well, what else are you going to do if not spend time being who you really are? I think the biggest thing is our ability to change. As we grow older, we want to keep cultivating that ability to change and be surprised by ourselves. I think we have so much capacity. We are really limitless in terms of what's possible, and just dedicating ourselves to something that we love and letting love and our love for that lead the way can maybe help override some of those objections and fears around change.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful note to end on. And where can people connect with you, learn more about your work, and buy your books?
Thanks, Crystal. My website is originalimpulse.com, and my books are available wherever books are sold. If you don't see it at your local independent bookstore, just ask them to order it. Any bookstore in the world can order Her Lisbon Colors or any of my other books.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for inviting me on. I loved talking with you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.